In the last video, we explored 5 reasons to use EQ. In this video, we'll explore why you may want to avoid using EQ. Equalization is one of the most important and most commonly used tools in mixing. But are there situations where it might be better to use EQ sparingly or even avoid it altogether? Well, here are my 3 reasons not to use EQ in a mix. Number 1, you like the way it sounds and you want to preserve the natural sound. If the sound you've recorded is already well balanced and the tonal quality of the instrument is desirable, there's no rule saying that you have to EQ. I mean, maybe put a high-pass filter on it just in case, but applying excessive EQ will alter the intended character of the recording. If you're making music focused on a natural perspective like jazz or classical, it's okay to keep the original sound or only use EQ if it's truly required. If you're also in charge of the recording, you still have a lot of control over the tone of the instrument using mic technique. There's a whole section in my book on mic technique if you'd like to learn more, but here's the basics. The closer you get to the source, the more bass is going to be in your recording. That's the proximity effect. And the inverse is also true. The further that you pull away, the more natural and balanced of a perspective you're going to get. If your microphone's directly on axis, you're going to capture the most high frequency detail. Whereas if you turn the microphone off axis, you're going to reject more of the high frequencies and get a more darker perspective. Now, there's a whole lot more nuance in microphone technique and mic selection and how these choices translate in the mix. If you do have control over the recording and mixing processes, then you can anticipate how you'd like the instruments to fit together and select mics and techniques to complement that artistic vision. In the mixing stage, you could also challenge yourself to rely primarily on the faders for track balancing, reserving automation as a last resort. This approach hones your skills in achieving your ideal volume balance before turning to EQ adjustments as a quick fix. And now a quick word from our sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid services are now more accessible than ever with their iOS app. With the DistroKid app, you can see your DistroKid bank and get notified when you've earned royalties and withdraw cash straight from the app. Check your streaming stats from Spotify and Apple and edit your account details to easily add or edit lyrics and song credits. DistroKid makes music distribution easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of their royalties and earnings. The DistroKid app is now available on iOS, so go to the App Store to download it. Join over 1 million artists that rely on DistroKid to get their music onto Spotify, Apple Music, and all other major streaming services. So if you haven't already, you can use the link in the description to get 7% off your first year's subscription with DistroKid. Reason number 2, if you think that you may be experiencing ear fatigue. If your ears aren't fresh, you'd best avoid trying to fiddle around with EQ. Hearing fatigue can impair your ability to perceive subtle nuances and accurately judge frequency, dynamics, and spatial elements in a mix. To avoid making incorrect decisions that could compromise the quality of a mix, it's advisable to rest your ears before making critical mixing judgments. Taking breaks and ensuring ear health are essential practices for any audio professional to maintain precision and clarity in their work. If you feel yourself needing to make enormous boosts, take a break and come back to the mix. It may be that your ears are tired and have become less sensitive to high frequencies. And always consider this in the context of the mix, the quality of the recorded tracks, and the artistic vision before deciding whether or not to apply equalization.
Sometimes it's very hard dealing with people who they might have toured a lot as guitarists or so, and their ears are kind of blown, and they're like, hey, can you boost that 3K a little bit more? And I'm already here with earplugs on, mixing this thing. I do write back like, hey, I had a project this actually pretty recently, and they wanted more highs. I had to turn the volume down because it was so bright, and I told them, hey, I'm happy to turn it up, but in my opinion, I think we're reaching a point where it's already very bright and brighter than any reference I could find on Spotify or so. So they actually said, okay, well, we were on tour and let's take a couple days rest. And they actually did come back with like, okay, yeah, you're right. Maybe let's take it back 10%, and we settled on that.
So give your ears a break before doing any serious mixing, but especially before using EQ. And reason number 3 to avoid EQ is if you're worried about introducing phase issues. Filtering with EQ, particularly when using steep curves, can alter the phase relationship of the frequencies around the cutoff point. This becomes a concern when you EQ different tracks of the same source material. When the common frequencies between these tracks fall out of phase, it leads to phase cancellation, which will impact the overall clarity of the recording. This issue of phase smearing can become more significant when using multi-mono or stereo mic techniques, where phase problems between tracks can result in a loss of clarity. In this case, recording setups like drum set recording would be at the greatest risk of cancellation due to the large amount of microphones typically used to record this instrument. One solution to this problem is using a linear phase EQ for drum sets or multi-mono stereo setups. Linear phase EQs delay the entire signal to prevent phase cancellation. Now, they do often demand higher CPU usage and should be used sparingly or committed to or bounced in place. The Pro Q3 manual recommends that if you're going to use a steep cut, linear phase EQ would be a great alternative to EQ with a natural phase shift, as the phase distortion effect becomes more noticeable with a greater slope. This is because linear phase EQ, unlike natural phase EQ, delays the entire signal uniformly, which prevents any phase discrepancies between multiple microphones of the same source. It's worth noting that this phase smearing is subtle and generally unnoticed by the average listener. This is not something that I typically think about when I'm EQing. If it sounds good, it is good. But as we've explored before on this channel, there are ways that your studio can lie to you. And this was a topic that I found while researching this video, so I thought it was worth exploring. Have you ever found linear phase EQ to be a benefit? Let me know in the comments. Thank you to DistroKid for your continued support, and thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing for more videos like this one delivered to your newsfeed. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Happy mixing.